Lexi is Head of Communications and Fundraising at WWF Scotland. Excuse me. She has worked across the third sector for the last 15 years, from leading national and international campaigns on climate change and tax justice with SCIAF, Caritas Scotland, to coordinating policy and public affairs work on the impacts of austerity with the Scottish Association for Mental Health. Lexi has worked with Stop Climate Chaos Scotland, Scotland's biggest civil society movement since its inception, including on the 2009 Scottish Climate Act and the Climate Justice Fund, joining the board in 2020. She was also a board member of the Scottish International Development Alliance from 2013 to 2018. And she has a master's degree in gender rights and development from the University of Glasgow. Thank you, Lexi. Please.
Thank you so much, Ravinder, and thank you everybody for inviting me to join you tonight. I feel wonderfully grounded after the two lovely reflections that we just had, because actually I was feeling a little nervous about joining the session this evening, but you've all made me feel so welcome. So to begin with, I was thinking about, you know, how do I plan and prepare my presentation here? You know, why should the Women of Faith Network be interested in Earth Hour and be interested in climate change? And really what I kept coming back to was just this sense that really core to all faiths is a notion of care for creation, care for our brothers and sisters in the human family, and acknowledgement of the interconnectedness of all life on our planet. But also I kept coming back to this sense that faith is active. Faith calls us to act. And I wanted to kind of talk to you today, I suppose, a bit about the opportunity that Earth Hour hopefully can open up for some people as a sort of a first step into action on climate change. I know that climate change is one of those issues that feels painfully overwhelming at times for a lot of people, and I also know that not everybody is, you know, a veteran activist, or not everybody wants to be, you know, very politically involved necessarily in the sense of, you know, lobbying and those kinds of things. So Earth Hour has always been about the people at the centre, about community and ways for people to kind of push open that door to a journey of activism for our shared home and for our planet. And it's always been as well about remembering small things, small actions can make you know, big ripples, so to speak. So not everybody is going to take the exact same journey through activism to the goal of tackling climate change. And so we want to make sure there's opportunities for everybody and what feels right for them. So here's what I'm going to try and roughly cover quite quickly in the time that we have this evening. And just to kind of cover a little bit about what does climate change actually mean? What is it really going to look like? What do we need to do about it, and how can we as individuals or collectively as a movement get involved? Where does Earth Hour come into that? So hopefully that will hopefully bring us in, you know, into a place together where we can feel a bit inspired about things we might do. So just to start and to open up with, what can we expect climate change really to mean, and what do we need to do? And please forgive me if this is kind of already something you're very well aware of, but I thought it'd be worth just kind of running through in a really sort of you know, quick overview in the beginning. But as most of us probably are aware of, as greenhouse gases go into the atmosphere from the burning of oil, coal, fossil fuels, these are trapped and are warming up our atmosphere, leading to a global average temperature rise. And that in turn is leading to melting ice caps and sea level rise. It's increasing unpredictable and severe weather events such as hurricanes. It's increasing the severity and unpredictability, I suppose, of weather patterns. We're going to be seeing more often, and more extreme flooding, drought, and other weather events such as those. Under the current UN Paris Agreement, which I'm sure many of you will have heard of, the Paris Agreement says that nations must commit to action that will keep that average global temperature rise to under 1.5 degrees. But what on earth is 1.5 degrees? Like, what does that mean? Like, what is the difference between half a degree or another half a degree? 1.5 sounds like nothing, really. What does it mean? Well, it's really actually very important. The difference not keeping to 1.5 makes is quite astonishing, really. So let's look at what the kind of difference between that 1.5 and perhaps 2 might mean. This is quite a busy screen, but I'm going to pick out a couple of things from here just to kind of illustrate that. So half a degree, while it seems like very little, could be the difference between 9% of the world's population being exposed to extreme heat waves at least once every 20 years. So 9% of the world population is about 700 million people. That's still a lot. But if we were to allow that further half a degree slip for a 2-degree average warming, we'd be looking at 28% of the world's population. That's 2 billion people being exposed to extreme heat waves at least once every 20 years. Similarly, 1.5 degrees of an average global temperature rise would mean 100% increase in flood risk. That's not good. But if we allowed temperature rise to reach 2 degrees, we'd be looking at 170% increase in flood risk. So I just thought it was worth delving into that a little bit, because it's very hard to conceptualize when people are saying we've got to keep to 1.5, we've got to reduce our emissions by 50% in the next 9 years, which is what science is telling us we must do, keep to 1.5. Quite difficult to understand, well, what does this actually really look like? So I think it would be worth spending a wee bit of time looking at what does climate change really mean? What are the impacts of climate change really going to be? And we know that already climate change is impacting on the people who are the most vulnerable to climate change impacts and also least responsible for the problem. Those are the people who are being hit first and worst by climate change. Namely, that's people in the global south. And as I was preparing for this, I was having a look through the Women of Faith Network website, and I was really interested in seeing the kind of core areas of work of women's leadership in these kind of areas, including peaceful, just, inclusive societies, freedom of thought, gender equality, environment. And I thought, well, let me look at these and let's explore how the impacts of climate change might fit into these areas of concern. And the thing that I think is really, really important to get across is how gendered the impacts of climate change are. They're extremely gendered and they're absolutely wrapped up in inequality. So if we look at, for example, peaceful, just and inclusive societies, as we begin to see more and more resource scarcity as a result of climate change, where the availability of fresh water and food is becoming insecure, we always are going to see gendered impacts. So girls in particular, they will be out of education for longer because they're having to spend longer and go further to collect water or firewood and so on. Often that's a role that falls to girls. And also it's making girls and women more vulnerable because they're having to travel further. It means that they may be going into areas that are more risky potentially. So that's one gendered impact. Similarly, often in times of resource scarcity, it's women who go without so that their families can have. And in times of natural disasters, for example, we often see women as the last to evacuate because they're usually the main carers, so they will evacuate others before themselves. Then when we look at something like freedom of thought, conscience and religion, and championing rights, quite often the environmental rights defenders around the world who are championing rights and who are working to defend their lands and their communities, they're often the ones who are subject to violence, threats, murder. Those are often women. On gender equality, well, we see unequal access to decision-making structures, whether that's at local level or you know, even at the UN Climate Convention. The most recent report is showing that you know, the gender representation in those negotiations is not moving as quickly as it really should be. And of course, you know, if you don't have the people who are most impacted at the table designing the solutions, then those solutions are not, you know, they're not going to be fully just to those that are fully appropriate to the problem that you're trying to solve. And then, of course, in the environment, women are often those with, you know, the most knowledge at the local and the community level on the appropriate and effective solutions. Whether that's, you know, we see quite often women are the first to kind of be early adopters for, or you know, set up teams themselves. You know, championing, you know, small-scale farmers, championing things like agroforestry, or women getting together to design early warning flood systems, those kind of things. And also quite often women are at the forefront of education, environmental education, whether that's formal or informal. So we can see that the impacts of climate change are absolutely gendered, and they're absolutely wrapped up in systems of inequality. But there are solutions. There are solutions to this, and they start small and gain momentum. So let's get on to that. You know, what is happening to tackle this? What's WWF doing about it, and how might you get involved there? So WWF is the world's largest independent conservation organisation. It's been going since 1960 and is present in over 100 countries. And our mission is to create a world where people and nature thrive. So you might know WWF as kind of, you know, polar bears, tigers, elephants, so on, but people are absolutely at the heart of our mission as well. So every year we run an initiative called Earth Hour, which has been going since 2009. And what it is that on the last Saturday of March every year, people all across the world who are concerned about climate change and protecting our home, our human family and the species that live here, it's a moment for everybody to get together and take a symbolic or practical action for the planet. So on the last Saturday of every month, of every March, every year, people get together at 8:30 p.m. and millions of people, at the last count, in over 178 countries worldwide, got together for Earth Hour and took part. Switch off non-essential lights for 1 hour and use that hour to, I think, as one of our earlier speakers mentioned, to stop, take a moment, reflect on our planet, think about actions that we might take, connect with others, and use that time as a kind of togetherness time by candlelight, to have conversations, to make plans, and have fun in the name of kind of protecting our planet. And Earth Hour is now the world's largest grassroots movement for our planet. And as I said at the beginning, it's not necessarily, you know, an event for somebody who's got 25 years of activism behind them, and they want to chain themselves to Parliament. Those people who want to do that, absolutely necessary to this. But Earth Hour is a much softer kind of it's for people who are not quite sure yet maybe how they're going to engage, or maybe they are already sure and they want to just take the time for togetherness, reflection, planning their next step. So yeah, Earth Hour really is all about community, it's all about the power of the people, and it's all about people just having that permission to stop, switch off, and reflect together on what's next, what's going to happen next. So that's this Saturday at 8:30. We'll be asking everybody to get together at 8:30, switch your lights off, and use the time to do an action. So I just wanted to reflect on a couple of success stories from Earth Hour around the world, or just a couple of examples really of how people have used Earth Hour almost as a sort of catalyst or jumping off point to do amazing things. So in Indonesia in 2019, folk used Earth Hour, got together to plan and begin a mangrove seedlings planting initiative, which resulted in 20,000 mangrove seedlings being planted. Mangroves are climate heroes. Not only do their roots protect from coastal soil erosion, but they also trap carbon in the soil. So they're an absolute climate hero. As a result of this work, Indonesia is now home to 25% of the world's mangrove population. It's massive, it's amazing. Finland, people got together and used the hour to have the world's biggest vegetarian candlelit dinner, you know, a really fun thing to do that really raised awareness of the role of food systems in climate change. In Scotland, we've used Earth Hour to engage people in campaigning on climate change and particularly climate legislation. We've now got some pretty world-leading climate legislation in place. And in Uganda, folk used the hour to begin planning and arrangements to start protecting degraded and improving on degraded lands in Uganda. So these are some kind of examples and I suppose inspirations, I hope, of things that we could start to be thinking about, things that we might do ourselves. As if you've known of Earth Hour before, you might think of it more as the kind of the lights off thing, the switch off. We've had landmarks from, I guess, Big Ben to Edinburgh Castle, to Taj Mahal, to the Sydney Opera House, so on. They switched their lights off for the hour. This year, in reflection of what's been going on around the world with the pandemic, the very difficult situation that many people find themselves in, we've decided not to focus on all of that. We've just decided to focus on people getting together in the way that feels right for them, staying at home by candlelight, using the time to create a moment to start their journey of action. And to engage virtually, or maybe in a more old school way, like getting out the paints or board games or something like that, you know, and connecting with each other. But there's a few ideas up here of what we would you know, suggest for a couple of starters for 10 ideas of things that people could get together to do. There are plenty of virtual events that we have organised. I'll bring some examples in a second. Screening a film, hosting a little event. We've got an interesting app at the moment which has some challenges on there for some kind of lifestyle changes that people might consider. In Scotland, we've got a creative initiative where we're asking people to use the hour to draw or write a poem or do something creative, thinking about what is the future Scotland that you want to see, a fairer, greener Scotland. And we'll be collecting those in to create an exhibition for the UN Climate Conference when it comes to Glasgow in November. But you know, there's also a whole bunch of things happening online that people should feel free to join. I'll share a link at the end, but panel discussions, orchestras by candlelight, that kind of thing as well. But the one that, you know, the things that I would really say to people is if you can join Earth Hour, use the time to think and plan about something that you would like to start. What will it start for you? Could it be an initiative to plant seedlings in your community? Could it be joining Urban Roots if you're in Glasgow? Could it be, you know, changing something in your household or your lifestyle, getting more engaged politically, maybe setting up a writing group locally to write to MPs or write to your newspapers, or a litter picking group? What are these ideas that could be on your mind that Earth Hour could be the catalyst or the moment to say, right, I'm going to plan how I'm going to do this, what I'm going to do. And WWF has got plenty of resources to help if you're thinking about any of doing any of those things. And please share what you're doing if you're on social media, because the way that we look at this is very much that when you share an action, you share what you're doing, when one person stands up and acts, when others see that, that's what builds a movement, that's what creates change. So you'll see the link here. I can put it in the chat later to find out more. It's just www.org.uk/Earth Hour or Google Earth Hour. But yeah, it's really about togetherness. It's about people getting together, using the time to think and act. So thank you all for the time. I do really appreciate being invited. And as I was kind of preparing for this talk, I thought, you know, I'm going to have a look. I'm going to go back to the women who inspire me and find a great quote to end with and leave everybody as inspired as I am. And the quote that I always come back to is this quote from Alice Walker, that activism is the rent we pay for living on this planet. But as I was looking through, I actually noticed on Twitter yesterday that Bernice King, who is the daughter of Martin Luther King, posted this on Twitter, which really made me think, which was, she said, action is how we resuscitate our faith. And that really brought me back to kind of where I started about how, for me, I think of faith as being, it is a call to all of us to act. Faith is active, it is inspiring, it is in solidarity. And so for me, I felt, let's end with some inspiring words from others who know what they're talking about. And I have run way over time. I'm very sorry for that, but I hope some of that was interesting, and I hope some of that helped you feel maybe a bit more inspired about things that we might do together to tackle climate.
Thank you so much, Lexi. That was very inspiring. Thank you. Yes, you've given us a lot of food for thought on how we can take Earth Hour forward. You made a little actually something that I was going to ask you whether you would consider, WWF would consider doing, and you said, oh, we have Earth Hour every month. I thought, yes, that would be a very good idea. If we can, perhaps one of the actions that all the women can do together, or all the people who are on this call, is to have, once a month, every Saturday, Earth Hour, switch off your lights and do something small or something big to help the environment, whether you just make other people aware of it, of the environmental impact that human beings are having on the planet, or whether you're going to change the light bulbs in your house to LED bulbs. So it can be just small little things, or it can be big things as well. Thank you so much.